Thank you all. It's so great to be back. I was telling Matt and Sally that this is actually the 25th anniversary of my graduation from this program, which is incredible. I graduated in 1999. A long time ago. I don't recognize anything. It's really, really wild. Thank you, ASU. Thank you, Creative Writing Program. This is basically where I fell in love with books. This is, I was sort of dabbling and I was trying to find my way, and I honestly can say that ASU is where I learned to love language. It absolutely filled my life, and it made me, human, really human, and sort of, it helped me find my people. It really did. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to read about 8 poems because I'm mathy and very specific. And I'll talk to you a little bit about this book, Diaspora Sonnets. So in 1972, my father chose to take us away from the Philippines. In 1972, Ferdinand Marcos, the dictator there, declared martial law. And my family was blacklisted by the Marcos regime. And so when people were blacklisted, they disappeared. And my father was paying for the education of my uncle, who was one of the students leading the protests in the Philippines, hence why we had to leave. I'm going to start with not a sonnet, but a pantoum. Pantoum beginning and ending with thorns. Because of the way a border on the map twists into thorns, my father stood in line in a ruined country with ruined men. We were footnotes on charred parchment, the boundaries lost at the precipice of a war shifting on the hour in spliced histories. My father stood in line in a ruined country with ruined men, and what for? Did he imagine the desert he would bring us to? At the precipice of a war shifting on the hour and spliced histories, the call to leave home throbbed inside him. Urgent pulses. And what for? Did he imagine the desert he would bring us to? Its thirsty and abandoned towns? There was a fire spreading within. The call to leave home throbbed inside. Urgent pulses crossed and uncrossed like tributaries on freshly inked maps. In thirsty and abandoned towns, there was a fire spreading within, so he took us away, because the country was ruled by swords which crossed and uncrossed like tributaries on freshly inked maps. And the guns would sound all night, like the feast days of saints. He took us away because the country was ruled by swords and men emblazoned with chevrons and pins, and the guns would sound all night like the feast days of saints. But really, there was more silence. There was worry and fear, and men emblazoned with chevrons and pins would draw black X's over places they'd conquered. Really, then more silence, then worry and fear. The flies would sing their hymnals in procession around the dead. The black X's over places now conquered. Maps of provinces, cities, family lines drawn and redrawn. The flies singing their hymnals in procession around the dead, and my father with a ticket to flee because home wouldn't let us stay. Maps of provinces, cities, family lines drawn and redrawn into travelogues and diaries, into stories passed in the night. Like my father with a ticket to flee because home wouldn't let us stay. Hum of the plane engine, hum of idling car, hum of the outboard motor, into travelogues and diaries, into stories passed in the night. We were charred footnotes on parchment, the borders lost to the hum of planes, of idling cars, hum of the outboard motor, because of the way the line on a map twists into thorns. So we ended up in a small town in eastern Oregon after ping-ponging across the United States, and this is a map of Idaho. You see it? Looks like Idaho. This is Oregon right here, and we were right here. We landed in a town called Ontario, Oregon, known for its maximum security prison and an Ore-Ida factory. And when my father brought us there, he wept. He literally wept. He was so upset. Diaspora Sonnet, with my father in the desert, seeing the valley before him and nothing else. I imagined him to be God, seeming to birth the spring wind which rattled our mobile of spoons. Did he unearth books to guide us to this moment? And having read the books, their taboos and their secrets, did he hide their possible romances? And did he save nothing in his pockets, save justice and disaster, unpardoned by the creases in my palm? And having had his hands framed by a racket of bone, did the wreck of their meat tell us how to receive the wild fields? Did these systems, complicit in however we push through, have answers despite my father's outrage? So if you have had forms with Tito, he was my forms teacher here, and he would be really upset with how I've written sonnets. I love pissing him off. It was fun. It was sort of a pastime. But, I learned a lot about the formalism. And, I've sort of become a formalist. Weirdly. But, different kinds of forms, the shapes that poems contain. And the other teacher of sonnets for me was Wanda Coleman. Wanda Coleman was my undergraduate teacher for a semester, and she was tough, and she was, the kind of work that's in here is more like what Wanda would be writing. This is a sonnet about working, and my dad took on odd jobs while we were, as I had mentioned, ping-ponging across the United States trying to find a place to stay. Diaspora Sonnet with my father in the off hours. The workers hum to while away afternoons, and tenants chide their sons to sweep from room to room last night's dust motes, stirred dreams entangled in wide streaks of light that in the daytime bloom, unsparing, bright like operatic high notes, pierced and round. The clouds of sleep fill with sound, and father, whistling his tune, leans against his broom to listen to men complain about their lives and each other. Brushstrokes wave away the dirt, losses, tune so deep within the brain we cannot help but weep as sons push brushes past door after door, locked tight like shut eyes in tombs. Hear their quiet bristles, their heavy score. So the poems in here are mythical, if that makes sense. Like, I think one of the impetuses of writing this book was to write an epic, right? To write an epic about our family, because my dad was in his 20s, in his late 20s when he made the choice to leave. And that's a pretty epic task. When I was 20, in my 20s, at roughly his age, I was playing NHL 94 on a Nintendo 64, and it was really good. I played the Detroit Red Wings because they were probably the best team on the Nintendo on that version of that year. I had a roommate who was from Alaska, and he was always pissed because I would always outscore him. And he was like, I'm the hockey guy. I'm from Alaska. No, man. Detroit. This guy has 99s on his score. I'm like, I'm going to use this guy. Sorry, it's digression. So my father, when he was living in the Philippines, he's from a little town called Marikina, Metro Manila, and it's basically a suburb of Manila, and it's where the shoemakers are, where they make shoes. And his family was a family of shoemakers. And this is an imagination of him. Diaspora Sonnet, imagining my father on the streets of Marikina, Metro Manila. My father in his 20s wears his pressed suit and carries a small hat box possessing something sensible, something pleased with itself. And through the cacophony of the queued-up industry of men coming home from work, my father is plain. Avenues of dust and motor trikes belch in umbrage to the poem of it. We might have stayed. My plain father, tired of the staccato of each adjectival commute, loamy, worn, blunted, and angry. As plain as the possibility of wonder in a hat box, as sensible as the need to leave the country. He is the center of sense, my father, never hesitating to thread his Windsor knot and polish his one pair of dress shoes, because he will wear his hat, he will go, and thereafter we will live in his thereafters. I'm going to end this book with this last poem about my dad. Diaspora Sonnet, imagining my father putting away his suits because there's no place to go. The fact that love was what had brought us here still registers against my father's loss. A pact he made when he was only years removed from primary, and still the costs are ghostly stops and starts that drift amid his daily oaths. Sometimes he paused to brush the soot from cigarette ash. Formalistic and pomaded, the straight-legged pantsuit plush with that promise of love born from abroad. Such elegant clothes, the best he could pack. And how he glistened with promise, well shod, his left and right now burdened steps, manic with worry now, my beautiful father, under the calculus of what's after. So I'm going to read new stuff. New shit is what they say. New shit! Is this being recorded? I should.
Which means you have to say it louder.
I know. I was like, it's... So I'm the poet of Worcester, Poet Laureate of Worcester, which is fucking weird. And, you know, I mean, I think one of the weird things that nobody tells you about being a poet laureate is that it's a lot of work, man. Like, you got to read to children, and they're scary. Like, really scary. And they're hard to, you know, I'm like, they don't care what you're doing up there. Oh my God, I can't find anything. I'm a mess. And this is my problem. I decided to like read off of a phone, and I never do that. Okay. But yeah, you know, they're hard to read to, and you have to sort of like create like a persona in a way. So this is a poem that I read for for the National Baseball Poetry Festival. Who knew it was a thing, right?
I just like it.
Right? Who knew it was a thing? So there was in the 90s, in the like 80s, 90s, late 80s, 90s, there was a player who played for the Mets. His name was Benny Agbayani. He's a Filipino guy. And I was looking for any kind of person who was Filipino on TV, and this dude was amazing. And there's a poem about Benny Agbayani. Couple things. The number one export of the Philippines is nurses and people, and the nurses make an appearance. The other thing to mention is that there is a volcano in the Philippines called Mayon Volcano, and it's constantly erupting. So this is about that. When Benny Agbayani became a Met. When Benny Agbayani became a Met, my ancestors rose and cheered. From their ancient graves, pairs of arms rose to make the wave. Every burial site a stadium, and for every one of his at-bats, Mayon Volcano spat a puff of smoke, visible for miles. Children in T-shirts with the number 50 hand-scrawled by Sharpies would run into the streets and clang on metal pans, calling all to feast. And when Benny's cleats dug into the box, the little cloud of dust rising from his spikes would drift across the continents into the living room of every Filipino, issuing a sneeze, which would be followed by a blessing. The diaspora was a flood of blessings. Watching the orange, blue, and white uniforms pixelated into millions of screens, tens of thousands of nurses held their breaths when they looked up between shifts and saw him rest the bat on his shoulder, staring down the picture. When Benny Agbayani was a Met, whole families, once torn apart by distance, held each other close, wrapped together tightly in the embrace of phone cords. Oh yes, we used to have like phones that had cords. The web of telephone lines crisscrossing the nation. Each long-distance call, the shimmering pulse of a wrist, bracing for the recoil of the bat, making contact. When Benny fielded fly balls, we'd all look into the sun for a speck of something to ease us into the heartbeat of Americana, where it was always summer, and the lawn markings formed grids visible from space. When Benny Agbayani was a Met, we thought the organ's roar was for us, and the syncopated applause put us into a rhythm in tune to our hearts. When Benny Agbayani put his mitt to the ground to stop a daisy cutter, millions of us put our ears to the earth to hear the rumblings of what we hoped would be thousands of footsteps following his path. But instead, they were galloping towards home. We'd raise the brim of our caps and nod our chins at a cool breeze or the smell of fryer oil. And when Shay sang in one voice, Benny and the Mets, we stood and put our hands to our hearts. We rocked back and forth on our heels, watching the strike zone get smaller and smaller. Watched as the sun made our shadows grow, and we waited until the roster made room for us in the show, now and in the ever after. Benny got injured, and then he got cut, and then he ended up playing ball in Japan. I'm going to read another poem from my Poet Laureate duties, and then I'm going to close with another poem. So the local newspaper asked me to write a spring poem. It's so charming, right? It's like, oh, it's really sweet, guys. And they're like, and it has to be like this. Like, basically, they dictated what I could do. It's like, it has to be a prose poem, and it can't look like a poem. So I wrote a prose poem that looks like that, because it was going to be in the paper, and the editor wanted to fool people into reading a poem.
Right.
It's like, all right, I can do that. The shit that the Poet Laureate puts up with. I mean, I'm telling you. I'm like, all right, I can do that. So this is about spring. April sweepers. In early April, street sweepers come to clean debris from our block, and my son would run to windows and watch their brushes turn and churn, engine noise, a low grumble, slightly shaking the house's foundations. We together watch as the old sludge of winter fades in watery streaks. It's as though the machines paint a new city, moving past the cars. I'm already editing in my head. In his delight, my son tracks maple leaves, something swift and uncaught from the fall when the city was a different coat of paint. He watches them churn upward into what he calls the sweeper's mouth. The leaves, once frozen in hunks of ice, are now free, easing their way into the bristles to be made into something new, and how the tang of metal and salt lingers in the air after the April sweepers pass. As I watch my son marvel at how swift and clean change happens, I think of the way the ice had bejeweled everything just a few weeks ago, and how I had bundled him up, his face wrapped in scarves, how he was too bound, his hands in pockets, boots sloshing through the slush to whatever matters at the moment. But now the starlings are back, picking away at the feeders. Now the return of the clean curb and the gutters whisk away winter's traces. We step outside to see the street made new. Where once the ruin of salt and city grime, we see flashes of mica from wet stone. Light rebounds off the clean pavers, and all is brightness. Together we move, unfettered by our winter gear, into a city that is always newly free. How patient we were for this. How sure we were, knowing that delight sometimes is on time. Mm-hmm. I am not that writer. I write dark stuff. I'm Mr. Darkness, but I think that one of the things that being a poet laureate has sort of challenged me to do is to conceive of a new audience, right? Like it was really hard to do this. I am not normally that person who writes that joyful, happy kind of poem, but because I was like all you guys. It's like anxious, bundled up, and it's like freaking out about what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life. I'm telling you. But yeah, did I touch a nerve? I'm sorry. It'll be okay. It really will be. I promise you. Yeah, man. So like the Poet Laureate gig, if somebody offers you to do it, say no. Huh? Don't. I just erased that. All right. I'm going to close with this poem. So all three of my sons are on the autism spectrum, and this is a poem about caring for them. And one of the things that I always have to say is that this is a poem that was written with their permission and with their blessing, and with the understanding that I'm in process just as they are in process too. This is entitled On Dressing Sons, a Colloquy, and it's in sections, and I'm going to snap to indicate the section. On Dressing Sons, a Colloquy. Beneath my fingers, the buttons and the small worship of their clasps. Capacious. The world between breaths is capacious. Think of the potentials of a bare stage. Think of the riggings in the darkness. The curtains slide back, zippers and hems. The mouths of shoes, empty of them. They are animal and full of ache and shape, or they are shorn of shape and have filled the interstices of my thought, or they are neither mine nor theirs, nor the idea of theirs. The rind of their clothing in heaps on the floor. Lungs in and out change the capacity of their shirts so that I am clothing a kind of buoyancy. Ritual by which the sun will not touch them. Ritual by which they will not feel cold. Ritual by which the wicked shall be repelled. Ritual by which we shall know them in a crowd. In another country, they would own one outfit. They would take turns wearing it. They will be each other in steps. We will preserve our memories of who we were in seeing them dressed. I wake to find the eldest nude, facing the mirror. He stands and sways. There are no breezes in the house, but he has made his own breezy movements. Because he is 10 and cannot tie his shoes, he insists I double knot every shoe to eliminate potentials. Hinged from their shoulders, a flamboyance. Color on their skin like a skin. Collars askew in their plaid Sunday shirts. Tidied up feet, steady little birds. And we will step into our potentials, and we will witness gilded cars breeze past with their wanting to shear us from our fabrics. And we will clutch our collars, holding our skins together so that we may know our skin, so that I may keep them held and whole. Thank you all.